They banished her at dawn, before the sun could witness the cruelty. No trial, not champion, not even the mercy of a whispered goodbye. One signature, one nod from a duke who claimed to love her. One sentence that tore her name from every ledger, every invitation, every memory worth having. They thought distance would quiet her. They thought humiliation would break her. They thought exile was the end of her story. But the forgotten learn something the cherished never do. When you have nothing, you fear nothing. And when you return with purpose. This is the moment the girl they erased comes back to collect her debt, not as a victim, as the reckoning. Chapter 1. The Wound. London had always taught her one lesson. Silence was survival. Rain smudged the windows of the carriage, turning the world outside into streaks of ink and shadow. She pressed a gloved hand against the glass, watching the city roll past gray chimneys, shuttered storefronts, grand facades she once dreamed she might walk through with pride. But dreams were for girls with protectors, and she had been abandoned long before her heart understood what abandonment meant. Her return was not the triumphant echo one imagines in novels. It was a quiet, calculated re-entry, like a woman stepping into the room of her own murder to study the stains on the carpet. She shifted, feeling the coarse hem of the dress she had mended herself. No silks, no pearls, no comforting weight of pedigree, only the memory of her disgrace and the bruise of betrayal that had never truly healed. She could still hear the voices. She is of no worth. Send her away. Let the scandal die with distance. The Duke will understand. He had understood? No. He had agreed. The night they banished her, she wore pale blue silk, unaware it would be the last fine garment she ever owned. The ballroom had glittered with music and candlelight, and she believed herself safe beneath his shadow, believed the promises whispered beneath colonnades and oak trees were sharper than society's teeth. She was foolish. He had faced her with an expression she did not yet recognize as fear, not fear of losing her, but fear of losing himself. When the accusations came, he did nothing. When her stepmother, immaculate in emeralds, declared her ruined, he lowered his eyes. When the council demanded she be removed to preserve the reputation of noble blood, he signed the notice with a steady hand. She remembered the ache of betrayal more vividly than the journey north. She recalled only the echo of carriage wheels and the cold taste of her own tears. It was not until she crossed the border of Yorkshire that she understood her exile would not be temporary. They had not sent her away to protect her. They had sent her away to erase her. Years passed. She learned to work, to read without tutors, to stitch rents in fabric, to barter, bargain, defend. To meet cruelty with stillness. Quiet strength became her armor. The world that discarded her taught her to survive outside its delicate dances and painted lies. And now she was back. The carriage halted before a townhouse she did not recognize. Tall, elegant, new, commissioned with money that would never have been hers. A gift from the family who had betrayed her, no doubt, to ensure she wouldn't appear in their drawing rooms unannounced. The driver descended, opened the door, and she stepped into the rain. London smelled of coal and wet stone, of ambition and rot. The street lamps flickered, their light forming halos on the slick pavement. She lifted her chin. She was not the girl they sent away. No governess to chide her posture, no chaperone to soften her opinions, no duke to look toward with aching hope. She had returned with something far more dangerous than innocence. Memory. Inside, a maid bowed and took her coat, stunned by the chilled fire in her gaze. "Your rooms have been prepared," the girl murmured. "We were told to expect you this evening." "By whom?" she asked. The maid hesitated, eyes darting to the floor. "By his grace," she whispered. The Duke. A name she had once spoken like prayer. Now, it tasted like iron and cold hatred. She dismissed the maid and climbed the staircase. At the landing, her reflection met her in a gilt mirror, hair darker, eyes sharper, lips no longer tremulous with hope. The woman staring back was not fragile. She was purpose, sharpened into flesh. A knock sounded at the door, not tentative, not polite. "À confident," masculinement. She did not answer. Silence was her first act of rebellion. The knock came again, lower, firmer, like thunder muffled by velvet. A voice followed deep, restrained. The memory of sin wrapped in command. "Open the door." She closed her eyes. The storm she had spent years preparing for had already arrived. Chapter Cox's Return. Collision. She moved toward the door with the deliberate calm one uses when stepping across thin ice. Every instinct urged her to open it, to seize the moment and destroy him with the truth he had once refused to hear. But instinct was the language of girls. She had been forced into womanhood by exile, and women learned to weaponize patience. She let him knock a third time. This one was softer, as though he knew she was listening, as though he remembered her habit of waiting, watching, measuring the space between breaths before she spoke. Her hand hovered above the latch. She drew a long breath and opened the door. He stood framed by the hallway's dim lamplight, tall, broader than memory, shoulders squared like a soldier who carried battles on the inside. Rain slicked the edge of his dark hair, and droplets clung to the collar of his coat. His face was not softened by time. It had hardened into something cut from winter marble. His eyes, those relentless gray eyes, swept over her with a heat she could not forgive. "Good evening," he said. He did not smile. He never had, not with ease. But once, there had been warmth beneath the ice. Now, only severity remained. She stepped aside, without a word. The old her would have curtsied, eyes lowered. The new her let him pass as a man might allow a wolf into her home under observation, never unguarded. He removed his gloves slowly, the movement precise, controlled. She watched the way his jaw clenched, as though every sinew fought to maintain composure. "I trust your journey was comfortable enough," he said. "Comfort," she replied, "is seldom offered to those who have been forgotten." His shoulders stiffened. "I did not forget you." Lies traveled faster than truth, and his lied beautifully. She turned her back to him and crossed the room, allowing him to see the weight of her disdain in the tilt of her chin. "Your letter of exile bore your signature," she said. "Ink remembers." He inhaled sharply, though he tried to hide it. There were few men feared by London's aristocracy, and he was one of them. His title was ancient, soaked in lands and wealth and old blood. He commanded troops during the continental conflicts, negotiated treaties, and quelled rebellions. Yet when she spoke, he looked like a man haunted. "Leanna," he murmured. Her name on his lips, as if he still had the right to use it, struck a match deep in her rib cage. "You do not address me so," she said. "Not anymore." He swallowed. It was the smallest movement, but she recognized it. The man who was always in command was fighting for words. "Then how am I to address you?" he asked. "The same way you did when you banished me," she replied. "As an inconvenience." A flicker crossed his face, pain, anger, regret she could not tell. The Duke spent years learning how to turn emotion into armor. He took any step toward her. She stepped back. That was when he faltered. He froze, gaze widening a fraction. The man who once assumed her orbit would always bend toward him saw the first tremor of his empire's collapse. She no longer moved to accommodate him. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair near the hearth. He obeyed. It was the first time she had ever commanded him, and he listened. She remained standing, silence stretched, thick with unspoken violence. He exhaled. "I did not summon you here to quarrel." "No," she said, "you summoned me because you finally realized you cannot control the narrative." His head lifted sharply. "You believe that?" "I know it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the way generals do when the enemy has already breached the wall. "You are in danger," he said. She laughed. It was soft, almost gentle a sound that carried no mirth. "You cannot threaten me with what I have lived." "I do not speak of society," he said. "They are vultures, predictable. I speak of something far more." The door downstairs opened. Voices echoed upward, hurried footsteps, the rustle of servants, the sound of carriage wheels departing. The Duke rose to his full height, tension in every line of his body. He was no longer speaking as a former lover or betrayer. He moved like a guard preparing for siege. A knock came sharp, impatient. A maid appeared at the entrance to the sitting room, skirts trembling from the speed of her climb. "My lady," she gasped. "Lord Valerian has arrived and insists." "Lord Valerian?" The Duke's voice dropped to a dangerous register. The maid nodded, whispering, "He claims she is under his patronage." The world tilted. Lord Valerian was not a friend, nor a memory, nor a comforting shadow from her past. He was the relentless architect of her return, the man who had recognized her brilliance during exile, who sent books, coin, and letters when no one else dared. A scholar, a diplomat, a gentleman who treated her mind as treasure. She walked past the Duke without looking at him. "Send him up," she said. The Duke stepped into her path. "You will not meet him alone." "Do not presume to govern me," she replied. His nostrils flared. "You think him safer than I?" I think him honest." Those 4 words cleaved him. He looked as though she had struck his ribs with a blade. She could almost see the old ghosts rising behind his eyes. Regret, cowardice. The night he allowed her to be taken. Footsteps ascended the staircase, graceful yet confident, a man accustomed to being welcomed everywhere he went. The Duke stood perfectly still. Lord Valerian entered. He was tall, raven-haired, his features sharp but softened by intelligence. His clothing bore the understated elegance of foreign courts, not gaudy, but impossibly refined. When his gaze fell upon her, it warmed. When it fell upon the Duke, it chilled. He bowed with delicate precision. "My lady," he said, "London has missed your light." The Duke's jaw locked. "You presume a familiarity I do not recall granting." Lord Valerian's smile was exquisite, almost polite, but there was iron underneath. "Your Grace," he replied, "you forfeited the right to familiarity when you abandoned her." The room shuddered with the unspoken. For the first time since she opened the door, she saw something she had long prayed for and never received. A man willing to draw blood on her behalf. The Duke took a step forward, shoulders squared. "You do not understand what occurred." Lord Valerian did not blink. "I understand, cowards." She inhaled slowly, letting the moment burn. The Duke turned to her, desperation slipping past his defenses. "You do not know what threatens you. What threatens us?" "Us?" she echoed. "There is no us." Lord Valerian extended his arm, not possessive, not demanding, inviting. "Walk with me tomorrow," he said softly. "The scholars of the Royal Society await your presentation." The Duke whipped around. "She will not set foot in that den of vipers." "She will," Valerian replied, turning his gaze to her again. "Because they fear what they cannot control. And she is beyond control now." The rain battered the window panes like fists against a coffin. She did not speak. Both men waited, one with pride, one with hope. She stepped toward the hearth, the firelight gilding her profile. "I will present," she said. The Duke closed his eyes. A decision had been made. Chapter 3. The Duke's Secret Regret. He left her townhouse without a coat, without gloves, without the courtesy of composure. The rain struck his shoulders like punishment, soaking into wool until every drop carried the memory of the night he destroyed her. The carriage waited, lanterns flickering like dying stars. His driver bowed, but the Duke did not climb inside. He walked alone through the winding streets of Mayfair, the sound of water pooling beneath his boots like a private requiem. He had once believed that grief was silent, that it could be endured with clenched teeth and rigid posture, that the world need never know that the immovable Duke of Ashford had broken his own heart. That belief had been arrogance. When she left London, so did every color in his life. He told himself it was necessary, required by law, by station, by the suffocating expectations of a heritage older than the blackened walls of Parliament. He had not expected the silence to be so cruel. He remembered the night with a clarity that should have decayed long ago. She stood in pale blue silk, trembling. Her stepmother's voice sliced through the ballroom like a blade dipped in honey. The counselors murmured. The papers were signed. He was supposed to protect her. Instead, he became the instrument of her exile. No one saw the tremor in his hand when he took the quill. No one saw him sign his name twice. One for the council order, one on a letter he would never send. He reached the iron gates of Ashford House, his ancestral prison, his crown, his punishment. The stone facade rose like a fortress. Its windows shuddered against the storm. The guards opened the gates, recognizing him instantly. The Duke walked through without nodding. Inside, the foyer smelled of lemon polish and ancestral arrogance. Portraits of dead Ashfords stared down from the walls. War generals, ministers, mathematicians, one reckless explorer who died in a duel for love. All of them were iron in the family history books. He hated each and every one. Their eyes whispered, "Weakness was not our legacy." He climbed the staircase to his private study, a room he once used to strategize military reforms. Now, it was a mausoleum of regret. He latched the door. The fire sat unlit, the lamps dim, the desk littered. Letters, hundreds of them, lay in neat stacks bound by ribbons and dust. Each envelope bore her name. He lifted one, carefully, like a priest handling relics. The ink had faded from time. "My dearest, I cannot." He stopped reading. He knew every word by heart. He had written her every fortnight for the first year of her exile. Every letter ended the same. "Forgive me." He never mailed a single one. If he had sent them, she might have returned before her spirit hardened. If he had visited, she might have let him fall to his knees. If he had defied the council, she might never have become a woman forged by fire. But he had been his father's son. Duty before love. Bloodline before mercy. Legacy before heart. He pressed his palm to the center drawer, the wood smooth from years of hesitation. He slid it open, revealing a locked ebony box. He hesitated only a second before unlocking it with a key he wore beneath his cravat. Inside, 20 newspaper clippings, ink-bleeding headlines from towns far from London, praises of a mysterious benefactress who taught orphans to read, rumors of a quiet patron who repaired roofs after storms, reports of anonymous investments in trades led by widows. He had tracked her. Every move, every rumor, every hint of her hand in a small miracle. She thought the world ignored her exile. He had followed her footsteps like a pilgrim follows saints. And when she fell ill her second winter in Yorkshire, he paid the doctor. When her boarding room was condemned, he bought another 2 weeks. When she purchased tools for the school she built, he paid the blacksmith triple. She never knew. His charity was silent because his guilt was enormous. He could not risk touching her life again. Not when he might poison it a second time. He closed the box and sank into his chair. The house was silent except for the steady percussion of rain. In the absence of witnesses, his face collapsed. He dragged a hand through his hair and forced himself to breathe. Why had she returned? He told himself it was coincidence. He told himself she came to reclaim a semblance of dignity. But the truth shivered beneath the surface. She was back to dismantle him. He had seen it in the way she held her shoulders squared, uncompromising. In the sharp turn of her gaze, no longer pleading, but evaluating. In the silence between her words, she no longer waited for permission. He had lost the girl who loved him. He had earned the woman who would ruin him. A soft knock interrupted his spiral. "Your Grace?" came a voice, muffled. His steward, Barrow. Loyal, cautious, a man who understood enough to never ask too much. "Enter." The steward bowed as he stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. His face was tight, uneasy. "There are developments," Barrow said. The Duke's brows snapped downward. "Speak." Barrow swallowed. "Lord Valerian has arranged for her to speak at the Royal Society." The words detonated like artillery. The Duke stood. "They will tear her apart." Barrow hesitated. "They will try." He moved toward the window, staring at the churning rain. She was brilliant. He knew that. He had seen her solve mechanical puzzles and decode coded military messages faster than seasoned officers. She had a scholar's mind with a poet's heart. But London loved spectacle more than genius. And the Royal Society was a serpent pit with velvet cushions. "They will brand her insolent," he murmured. "They will call her pretentious. They will laugh." "And Lord Valerian?" Barrow asked quietly. The Duke's jaw tightened until it hurt. "He will bask in their outrage," he said. "He will be the knight at her side when the lions approach." "And Your Grace?" He turned. "Do you intend to intervene?" The question was a blade hidden in velvet. His steward knew him too well. He did not answer immediately. He stared at the cold portraits. The men who built armies and shattered nations. Men who never kneeled for anything but crowns. He would kneel for her. But it was too soon. "Todo esperate." "To Rav." "I will watch," he said finally. "And if she fails?" The Duke's voice dropped to its deadliest register. "She will not." Barrow nodded and backed toward the door. "Oh," he added, pausing. "A visitor arrived earlier. Lady Montrose." Cold lightning ripped through him. "Send her away." "She refused," Barrow said softly. "She waits in the east drawing room." He found Lady Montrose in a velvet chair, draped in silver embroidery, her eyes sharp as she surveyed the decanters of brandy on the mahogany table. Her smile was thin, predatory. "She has returned," she said, as though discussing weather. "She has," he replied. Lady Montrose tapped a gloved fingernail against crystal. "And already you are making mistakes." He stepped closer. "You do not understand her." She rose, slow and regal. "I understand society, which is more dangerous." He laughed once, a hollow, bitter sound. "Society already devoured her." "No," Lady Montrose corrected. "It scarred her. There is a difference." He said nothing. Lady Montrose tilted her head, studying him like a strategist assessing a broken chess piece. "You will lose everything if you choose her now," she said. "The council, the inheritance, the crown's favor." "Then I will lose it," he interrupted. She blinked. He had not spoken the truth aloud in years. It felt like tearing a chain from his throat. Lady Montrose recovered, lips curling in disdain. And for what? For a woman whose brilliance threatens every man in the room? For an exiled charity girl who made herself indispensable to peasants? He did not shout. He did not rage. He simply looked her in the eye. "For the woman I failed," he said. And Lady Montrose, enemy of kindness, wielder of social knives, drew silent, because she understood something no one else had yet grasped. He would burn London to cinders if it meant earning one chance at forgiveness. Chapter 4. The First Move. The ballroom at the Royal Society gleamed like a cathedral made for worshipping intellect. Crystal chandeliers hung from arched ceilings, shedding gold light on velvet drapes and marble columns. Scholars, magnates, diplomats, and titled heirs swirled in conversation, their voices a mist of arrogance and speculation. Tonight was less a lecture than a spectacle, and every guest came hungry, some for knowledge, most for blood. She stood at the edge of the dais, back straight, hands clasped neatly before her, the picture of calm. Her gown was not lavish nor fashionable. It was simple, midnight blue silk matching the shade of the sky outside moments before dawn. Nothing about it proclaimed wealth, and yet every woman in the room envied her, because confidence, when unburdened by apology, was more dangerous than jewels. She felt the hostility in the air. Every whisper was sharpened like a dart. The banished girl, Ashford's mistake, an untested mind, a charity teacher, an embarrassment. She did not flinch. Her eyes drifted over faces she recognized from her exile. People who had waited for her to break. People who had laughed when she fled. People who assumed her return must be born of desperation. Then she noticed the one man not whispering at all. The Duke. He stood near the back of the hall. He had dressed in black, severe and immaculate, as though mourning. Only the faintest sheen on his hair hinted that he had walked through rain rather than arrived by carriage. His arms were folded like a watchman who expected violence. Their eyes met. The ballroom fell away. His gaze held apology and agony and restraint, so fierce it might have been a chain. She held her chin higher, not in defiance, but in declaration. "I am not yours to protect." A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Are you prepared?" Lord Valerian murmured at her side. His presence was fire, dangerous but warming. Tonight he was dressed in deep burgundy, confident and charming. A wolf in velvet. His hair fell in meticulously arranged waves. His expression was all gentle encouragement. She answered him without turning her head. "I've never been more ready." The stage manager signaled. The crowd shifted, forming a semicircle, hungry for the performance. Lord Valerian offered his arm. It was a kindness, but it was also armor. Linking arms meant alliance, and tonight alliances were currency. She placed her fingers on his sleeve. The Duke's jaw hardened. The moderator, a rotund man with too much wine in his cheeks, cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, lords and esteemed scholars," he began. "Tonight we witness something rather unprecedented." Murmurs rolled through the crowd. A demonstration of mechanical and mathematical insight by a woman. "A scholar," Lord Valerian cut in smoothly. "Not a novelty." The moderator faltered, his lips pressed into a resentful line. The guests absorbed the tone like dogs scenting blood. Her turn. She stepped forward, voice steady. "My work is not a demonstration," she said. "It is a solution." The hush that followed was not respect. It was the eerie silence of surprise. She continued. "For decades, the Royal Society and the King's Council have argued that the human mind cannot reliably calculate large quantities without error, that no system can assist without spawning greater mistakes. That complexity demands chaos." She reached into her satchel and withdrew a leather-bound ledger. "I disagree." She placed the ledger on the lectern and opened it to reveal pages of diagrams, circles, levers, numerical progressions, sequences of cogs and weights. "This," she said, "is a device capable of calculating ratios used in naval engineering." Skepticism swelled. Impossible. Childish sketches. She must be joking. She did not raise her voice. She did not tremble. "Ships sink," she said. "Not because sailors are ignorant, but because human memory falters. A device does not forget." She pointed to a system of rotating disks. 10,000 calculations, no loss of precision. A week's work completed in 3 hours. Silence snapped like a rope, breaking. One man, older and powdered like marble, spoke up. "You claim to improve the ships of the King's Navy? And yet you are no Navy engineer, she smiled. No engineer was born one. Someone had to do the first calculation. Snickers, hisses. But the older man leaned back, unsettled. Lord Valerian stepped closer, as though shielding her from the crowd's poison. She felt his warmth. She was grateful, terrifyingly so. Then a second voice cut through. Cold, barbed. And where did you obtain funding for such an invention? Lady Montrose. She stood on the periphery, silk like poured silver, eyes like a hawk's. She did not hide her disdain. She wore it like a brooch. Surely, Lady Montrose continued, a charitable orphan teacher did not finance engineering toys with her own funds. The crowd sharpened. This was the first strike. She speaks as though the world owes her tribute, someone muttered. What disguises itself as brilliance, another hissed, is merely desperation. Their barbed whispers pricked. She waited until the murmur crescendoed, then calmly said, You mistake poverty for helplessness. A ripple moved through the audience. Confusion, irritation, disbelief. She placed her palm on the ledger. I funded it with work, with trade, with years of selling solutions to small problems. Irrigation design, textile looms, river channeling. I fixed them, they paid me, piece by piece. Lady Montrose blinked. A miscalculation. The older scholars shifted. The nobles looked uneasy. A young naval lieutenant stepped forward. If your device is real, may we test it? Of course. She lifted her satchel again. This time she drew out a prototype metal discs, polished and interlocked, each with carefully lettered notches. A gasp. She had not come with promises. She had come with proof. She handed it to the lieutenant. Calculate the beam ratio on a frigate of 51 meters length, 690 tons displacement, she said. Assume crosswind factor 2. The lieutenant turned the discs. 3 rotations. 4. 5. The answer appeared in the gap, like a secret surfacing. His lips parted. She's right. Gasps rushed through the hall. He tried another calculation quickly, clumsily, but with growing desperation, as though he needed the device to fail so he could distrust it. It did not fail. He looked up, astonished. This could change naval architecture, he whispered. And, she replied softly, spare the lives of sailors. Even the aristocrats could not sneer at that. At the back of the room, the Duke's hands tightened until his knuckles whitened. She was radiant. Not delicate, not breakable. Radiant. Every phrase was a blade, every answer a shield. She carved away their arrogance without raising her voice. She had been forged in exile. He was proud. He was terrified. He was undone. The moment the lieutenant confirmed her results, one truth became clear. The council could never erase her again. She had stepped beyond their influence, which meant the council would try to destroy her in new ways. He studied the other men, their narrowed eyes, their tapping fingers, their whispers that smelled of plots. If they could not discredit her mind, they would weaponize her history. Lord Valerian sensed it too. He moved his hand behind her back, not touching, not presumptuous, just close enough to signal allegiance. You've stunned them, he murmured. She allowed herself the smallest smile. Good. They needed stunning. Then, you understand what comes next. Criticism. And offers, he added. And traps. She nodded. He leaned closer, voice low enough that the Duke could not possibly hear, yet the Duke did hear, because he had learned long ago to read lips. We will not let them bury you again. We. The Duke's heart constricted. She turned away from Lord Valerian as the moderator regained control of the room. Another test, he demanded, desperate to reclaim authority. One beyond naval measurements. A Parliament clerk stepped forward, sneering. Calculate the interest compound on a 10-year bond at 4% with irregular payments. She inclined her head. Certainly. She asked for 3 numbers. The clerk rattled them off. She spun the discs with swift, sure precision. Your answer, she said, tapping the ledger, is inferior. Your ledger holds 3 transcription errors. Your investors are currently defrauded of £730. The clerk paled. The nobles gasped. The crowd erupted. A roar of delight, outrage, shock, admiration. And in that moment, the Duke knew London would remember her name. Whether in reverence or fear, he could not yet say. The moderator called an end to the demonstration. Applause broke, not polite, not orderly, but fractured and uproarious. She bowed once, then stepped down from the dais. Lord Valerian was beside her immediately, offering a glass of water. "You handled them," he said, admiration warm as summer. "You carved them open and left them bleeding." "It wasn't enough," she murmured. His brows lifted. "They still think I am a novelty, and novelty must be destroyed to preserve comfort." Valerian's smile sharpened. "Then we will destroy their comfort." It was genuine loyalty, and she did not know how dangerous loyalty became when it wore an elegant face. Before she could respond, shadow blocked the golden chandeliers. The Duke. She looked up, not startled, not cowed, calm. "Your Grace," she said. Everyone around them fell silent. The ballroom could not resist spectacle, and the sight of her addressing the man who had once exiled her sent heat through the crowd like wildfire. He bowed not deeply, but with sincerity that shocked onlookers. "You have given London a gift," he said. She met his gaze. "London never asked for one." He swallowed. "London may not deserve it." Lord Valerian stepped forward. "The society will have its hands full. She has overturned a century of assumptions." "Assumptions," the Duke replied, "are only overturned when someone refuses to bow to them." Another silence. Different this time. She felt heat bloom across her chest, anger or gratitude. She could not separate them. "Your Grace," she said evenly, "I did not return to impress anyone." "No," he agreed. "You returned to claim what should always have been yours." The room froze. Whispers ricocheted through marble columns. Lord Valerian's expression shifted interest, caution, something akin to jealousy smoldering beneath the surface. She spoke before either man could twist the moment into battle. "I returned for the children," she said. "Everything else is incidental." She walked past them both. The Duke watched her go, knowing that in this new battlefield, her heart was no longer fragile. It was a weapon, and the war had only just begun. Chapter 5. The Breaking of the Mask. Rain had christened the city that afternoon, polishing every cobblestone and alleyway with a silver sheen. But by dusk, the sky was clear, too clear, as though London were preparing to watch a performance. The carriages arrived in steady procession, wheels echoing against iron gates. Lamps flickered against the ornate facade of the Montrose estate, casting the mansion in amber and shadow. Inside, the grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers, every crystal a star in captivity. The occasion was announced as a charity benefit, but no one here cared for charity. They cared for hierarchy, spectacle, and the thrill of witnessing humiliation masked as benevolence. She arrived alone, no chaperone, no hand on her arm, no apology in her posture. Her gown was ivory silk, draped simply, unadorned. The absence of jewels made her luminous. She was the kind of beautiful that required no witnesses to prove it. That was why they hated her. The first whispers struck the moment her slipper touched marble. She shouldn't be here. No husband, no title, no escort. A scholar, not a lady. The Duke's old mistake. Their voices did not matter. Their stares did not matter. Not anymore. She had stood before scholars and proved them fools. A ballroom held no terror greater than that. Still, her heart thrummed like a bird behind ribs. Not with fear, but with the strange awareness that tonight would change something. She had been invited to the Montrose benefit only for one reason. They wanted to test her, to measure the limits of her composure, to force her into a corner where she would either lash out and degrade herself or bow and be diminished. She had once bowed. London had nearly devoured her. Not tonight. "Look at her," Lady Beatrice Montrose whispered, voice like honeyed venom. Her daughter Clarissa clucked with feigned pity. "It's tragic, truly. One marvel of mathematics, and she thinks herself fit to dance among dukes." "Dances are not calculated," her mother replied. "No, they are survived." Their laughter rippled discreetly. Across the hall, she accepted a glass of champagne from a servant. She didn't drink. Her fingers simply rested on the stem, a weapon disguised as etiquette. From the mezzanine, Lord Valerian spotted her and descended with the kind of grace that drew eyes in his wake. His smile was golden, unapologetically bold. His confidence, the effortless kind that made titled men uneasy. "Am I late?" he asked as he reached her. "For what?" "For witnessing the stabbing glances of London's finest." He paused, lips curved. "I should like to be present for everyone." She laughed, soft and genuine. It was the kind of laugh that could start wars. "You are aware," she said. "They think you my patron." His eyes narrowed, not offended, but amused. "Let them. Patrons are feared. Lovers are hunted." Before she could answer, the air shifted. A hush, too subtle to name, yet impossible to ignore, rolled through the crowd. Heads lifted, conversations stilled. The Duke had arrived. He entered not with fanfare, but like a storm slipping through the cracks of a door. His coat was navy, the cut immaculate. His boots were polished obsidian, the silver at his temples caught lamplight like frost. He was a man who had mastered the art of silence. But silence around him was never empty. It was a warning. His gaze found her instantly, not because he sought her, because he could not help it. They did not approach him. They never did. He was the sort of man people made space for, simply to breathe without fear. He crossed the ballroom with measured steps. Lady Montrose attempted to intercept him. He sidestepped her with polite cruelty, acknowledging her title, ignoring her person. When he reached her and Lord Valerian, he bowed first to her. "You came," he said quietly. She tilted her chin. "I was invited. Bevolves. I don't fear wolves. You should. I learned to hunt when they banished me." A flash of something dangerous passed in his eyes. Pride, regret, longing. Lord Valerian made no effort to disguise his smirk. "Your Grace looks unsettled." The Duke's gaze flicked to him. "I'm evaluating the exits." "For retreat?" Valerian asked. "For strategy." The tension between them was steel drawn against steel. She felt it heat, sharp enough to bleed. Lady Montrose, sensing spectacle, swooped in. Her perfume was chokingly sweet, her smile professionally cruel. "My dear," she began, addressing the heroine as one might address a misbehaving servant. "Your lecture was charming." The heroine's fingers tightened around the champagne flute. "Charming implies entertainment," she replied. "I was not there to entertain." Lady Montrose laughed. "Of course, but one must remember women flourish best when admired, not when—" Her eyes flicked over the heroine's bodice, then her hips. When attempting to be taken seriously, a circle of listening guests leaned in like spectators at a duel. The Duke opened his mouth. The heroine lifted her hand to stop him. Hef fell silent. She faced Lady Montrose fully. "If your goal is to provoke me, you will have to try harder." "Provocation?" Montrose echoed. "My dear, I only speak of your limitations." Clarissa Montrose appeared with a stack of paper, printed diagrams, hair sketches, hair device. "Stolen." "Mother thought the society should see these," Clarissa announced. "We've made improvements." A second ripple moved through the crowd. Predatory, eager. Lady Montrose laid the sheets on a polished table. A naval calculation using her method adjusted just enough to produce elegant failure. If the model were to be adopted based on these falsifications, a ship might sink. Men might die. She would be blamed. "It seems," Lady Montrose purred, "that the Royal Society has already begun to adapt your design." "And yet," Clarissa chimed, "you were not consulted." The ballroom waited for the strike, for the scholar girl to break, to tremble, to protest, to cry, to reveal the weakness they prayed she possessed. But she did something far more dangerous. She smiled. "You printed your errors," she said calmly, "instead of hiding them." Clarissa blinked. "What?" She lifted a page, one line of calculation, circled in red ink by her own hand. "Here, incorrect ratio. You mislabeled tonnage as displacement. The device would never fail. Your understanding did." Amilmir surged. Then she turned to Lady Montrose. "And here, you reversed the gear sequence. That would cause catastrophic collapse." Lady Montrose stammered. "You attempted to counterfeit something you did not comprehend." Several naval officers stepped closer. One studied the diagrams, brow wrinkling. "This would have torpedoed our calculations." "Beyond torpedoed," another murmured. "It would have doomed crews." Lady Montrose pallet, a rare and exquisite thing. The heroine set the papers down gently. "If you wish to ruin me," she said with a softness that cut like diamond, "you must be competent." Laughter, real laughter, erupted from the crowd. Not polite giggles, not nervous titters. Real, explosive amusement. London had witnessed blood, not hers. Clarissa's cheeks burned. You tricked us." "No," the heroine said. "You assumed you were superior." It was not shouted. It was spoken like truth, and truth landed heavier than any insult. Lady Montrose recovered just enough venom to spit one last attack. "You may fool the men of the Navy. You may impress your little supporters. but you will never find a husband. No one respectable would take you. Silence. Every gaze turned toward the Duke. Every heart paused. Even the musicians froze mid-note. The Duke stepped forward. His voice was a blade. Only cowards choose wives they do not fear. A gasp cracked across the ballroom. Some staggered back as if struck. Lady Montrose faltered, eyes wide with shock. Clarissa whispered, horrified, "You defend her?" He turned his gaze on them, cold, unflinching. "Not defend. Recognize." Then, louder. "She is what London pretends to value. Brilliance, courage, mercy." The crowd listened, trapped between awe and terror. "She is not a novelty. She is the future. And you are frightened." The ballroom shook, not physically, but socially, structurally. A tectonic fracture through the very hierarchy that had once banished her. Lady Montrose grasped for composure. She pointed to the heroine. "She is nothing but the orphan teacher." The heroine's voice was steady. "I am the woman who survived your exile." The words landed like artillery. No one laughed. No one whispered. Every aristocrat in the hall understood. She had not crawled back. She had returned to conquer. Lady Montrose staggered backward, collapsing into a chair, gasping as though the air itself had betrayed her. Clarissa turned away, eyes wet with humiliation. The Duke approached the heroine, the air between them charged with the weight of everything they had never said. "I should have defended you years ago," he murmured, voice cracking. "You had the power to do so," she replied. "I know," he said, "and I did nothing." Lord Valerian's hand brushed the heroine's shoulder. "Then perhaps," he said, tone velvet and iron, "you should step aside and let someone who will." The Duke's eyes narrowed. "I have stepped aside quite long enough." "And she paid the price," Valerian returned. Their gazes clashed, one forged by guilt, the other lit by challenge. She stood between them, untouchable, incandescent. For the first time, she understood her power was not her intellect. It was her refusal to bow. Tonight, London saw it. Tonight, they witnessed the woman they had underestimated. And from the way the Duke looked at her, they also witnessed the beginning of his reckoning. Chapter 6. The Reckoning in the Library. The storm did not wait until dawn. It cracked across the heavens in jagged streaks, rattling every window in the Montrose estate as thunder boomed like cannons. Fine guests fled before the rain could soil their feathers, carriages splashing through puddles as panic overruled etiquette. Inside, the ballroom dimmed, the musicians dismissed, candles snuffed, one by one. Only 2 flames remained lit above the grand staircase and in the private library where the Duke waited. He had not followed her immediately. He knew the rhythm of her anger. It was not a wildfire. It was an ice storm, silent, merciless, beautiful, destructive. He waited because he feared interrupting the very dignity she had spent years forging. But he waited because he could not bear letting her walk away without the truth. She entered without knocking, rain dripping from the hem of her gown. She had walked into the storm instead of accepting a carriage. Of course she had. The door closed with a click. No servant dared peek inside. The Montrose library was cavernous, lined with dark walnut shelves and ancient volumes that smelled of dust, musk, and forgotten ambition. A fire glowed in the hearth, low and restrained. He stood before it like a penitent knight, coat undone, hair damp. Water had beaded across his shoulders and dripped to the floor. If pride had been a crown, he had removed it. She did not approach him. She went to the table instead, stacked with decanters and crystal, and poured water, not wine. The glass trembled slightly when she set it down. "I assume," she said, her voice too calm, "you've come to tell me you were simply protecting me when you let them exile me." He flinched. "Do not twist my silence into mercy. Then call it what it was. A failure." The word hung between them like a corpse. She said nothing. He had not expected forgiveness, but he had expected response. The absence of it was worse. He forced breath past his throat. "London devours weak prey. I knew that the moment they turned on you. I thought—" "You thought I would bend?" she interrupted. "Not bend," he said quickly. "Survive." "Survive?" She laughed quietly, like someone remembering their own funeral. "The way a beggar survives winter?" He closed the distance, not daring to touch her. Her lashes glistened with rain, but none of it was tears. "Not that way," he murmured. "You left me to them." "No," he said. "I left you to yourself." Her eyes snapped to his. Anger blazed there. "How noble," she hissed. "You abandoned me, but with philosophy." She turned to leave. He blocked the door, not with arms, not with anger, but with desperation he could no longer hide. "Listen to me," he said. "If you walk away now, you will never know the truth." She froze. "Truth?" she echoed. "You think truth will unbury what you allowed?" Lightning split the window glass with white fire. The thunder shook the floor. He swallowed. "I thought you would return." She stared at him like he was insane. "You sent me away. I expected you to come back stronger, not vanish." Silence. A silence thick enough to drown in. She took one slow breath. "You thought exile would refine me?" He nodded miserably. Stupidly. "I believed you would make them regret underestimating you. And you did. But," he faltered, "but I did not stay behind to shield your name, or your work, or your reputation." His voice cracked. "I let them destroy you so you would become indestructible." She stared as though looking at a stranger. Then she whispered, "You justified my suffering as character growth." It was the hardest thing he had ever heard. He closed his eyes. "I did." She did not slap him. She did not shout. Instead, she spoke so softly that every word was a blade. "And what did you lose, Alexander?" He looked at her. "My peace." It was not enough. It was not close to enough. But it was real. He walked past her, to the desk at the far corner of the room. He opened the bottom drawer. Inside, wrapped in worn ribbon, lay a stack of letters, hundreds of them. He placed them on the desk. "These are yours." She did not move. "What are they?" "Everything I never sent." "Herr Pulsehammer." She approached as if nearing a grave. She untied the ribbon. "The first letter, you deserved gentleness. I was too clumsy to offer it. The second, I regret allowing their voices to silence mine. The third, I wanted to burn London for you. Herr Fingers tremble." Pages after pages of apology, fear, longing, rage, words he had carved alone, night after night, never mailed because regret was a coward's currency. "You wrote these," she whispered. "I did, and never sent them. I couldn't. Because I did not want to admit how much I needed you." He pressed his palms against the desk, veins taut. "I could have challenged the council. I could have ruined reputations. I could have taken your side publicly." He lifted his head, eyes blazing. "But I was a duke taught to protect legacy, not people." His voice shook. "And I chose legacy." Her throat closed, not from pity, from fury. "Legacy," she repeated. "You sacrificed me to protect a title." "No." He stepped forward. "I sacrificed myself as well." He reached into his coat and produced something wrapped in velvet. He set it gently on the desk. She hesitated, then lifted the cloth. A silverger, perfectly cut, polished to mirror brightness. Recognition struck her like lightning. It was her design, not copied, not stolen, but completed, precisely. Her eyes shot to him. He breathed unevenly. "I knew you would return one day, and I wanted something worthy of your return." She recoiled, as though burned. "You dare claim your patience was devotion?" His voice cracked. It was cowardice wrapped in love. They stood inches apart. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the library in stark white. He spoke as if confessing to a priest. "After the exile, I spent 2 years trying to forget you. Then I spent 3 trying to find you. I ruined business partnerships chasing rumors of your name. Every time someone mentioned an irrigation device in Manchester, a loom in Leeds, a water wheel in Derbyshire, I went." He laughed bitterly. "They thought I was a patron of industry. I was chasing a ghost." Her lips parted. "You were the anonymous funds." He nodded. Her emotion twisted into something complicated. Anger braided with grief. Humiliation braided with wonder. "You sent money to shelters, to schools, to the places you might pass through," he said, "to give you ground to stand on." She pressed a hand over her mouth, not to hide tears, to hide the scream she wanted to release. "You did nothing when I fell," she whispered. "But when I crawled, you padded the floor." He closed the last inches between them. His voice was a bruise. "I did not know how to help you without hurting you further. And yet you still hurt me." He did not deny it. He looked at her like a man who had drowned already and did not care if he drowned again. "Name your punishment." She blinked. "What?" "If you want me ruined, say the word." He touched his throat. "I will kneel at Parliament. I will split my estates. I will give your school the deeds to York Avenue." He did not speak the next sentence aloud. "I will give you anything." She stared at him, stunned, breath shallow. The fire crackled in the hearth. The rain hammered the windows. Her future, once stolen, now hovered inches from her grasp. She lifted her hand slowly, deliberately, and picked up the silver gear. It gleamed in her palm, cold, perfect, uncompromising. "It was never your job to save me," she whispered. "I did not need a guardian." He nodded. "I know that now." Her gaze sharpened. "But I did deserve a witness." His jaw clenched. Tears threatened, brutal and unforgiving. "I will be one," he said, "if you allow it." She did not answer. Not yet. Not easily. Instead, she reached for the letters, gathered them in both arms, and turned for the door. He called after her. Not commanding, not pleading, but rough. "Do not vanish again." She did not turn back. Her voice floated through the crack of the closing door. "Then stop mistaking silence for love." The door shut. The storm howled. And the Duke sank into a chair, head in his hands, for the mask he had worn all his life, the mask of control, of lineage, of unshakable nobility, finally shattered. Chapter 7. The Rival's Offer. Morning in London was never kind. Yet that day it seemed almost conspiratorial against her. A pale, bruised sky pressed against the windows of Henrietta's borrowed chamber in Lady Ashcroft's townhouse, and the city's noise seeped through with a kind of unfeeling indifference. Carriages rattled through the square. Drivers barked at their teams. Somewhere a baker hollered the price of sugared buns. Society's hungers were relentless, whether for gossip or for breakfast. She sat upright on the small divan, still in her simple morning gown. The tea her maid had brought her sat untouched on the tray. Her hands were folded in her lap, though not in prayer. She had prayed enough years already to be believed, to be respected, to be rescued, to be anything other than a pawn tossed into the wind. She no longer prayed. She assessed. She calculated. She remembered. The humiliation at the ball had not shattered her. It had carved her. The mirror on the far wall reflected a young woman who no longer looked meek or erased. There was something tempered in her now. Steel, perhaps, or bone-deep refusal. A soft knock came at the door. "Enter," she said, her voice calm even. Lady Ashcroft did not enter. Instead, her maid, Sarah, slipped in with a little curtsy. "Your ladyship, Sir Tristan Street Clare, awaits in the drawing room." Henrietta blinked. "Sir Tristan? So early?" Sarah hesitated. "He said he wished to see you before society was fully awake. He's been pacing." A strange flutter took Henrietta's chest. She stood, adjusting the sleeve of her indigo gown. "Very well." She followed the maid downstairs. The drawing room smelled faintly of bergamot and old piano keys. Tristan stood at the far window, hands clasped behind his back, sunlight catching the silver buttons of his coat. He turned when she entered, and there was no hesitation in his gaze. "Lady Henrietta." He bowed, but it was a bow of respect, not obligation, a bow to an equal. "Sir Tristan." She lowered her eyes the proper amount, then lifted them again, daring any scandal should it bloom. "I did not expect you so soon." "No doubt you expected worse." His lips quirked in that half-hidden, half-tender smile. "You endure more than any should." Henrietta moved to the settee. "Endure, or simply continue breathing?" "Both," he said. "And you do both with grace." She stared at him, emotion prickling behind her stern composure. "You saw everything then?" "I did." Tristan stepped closer, every motion deliberate, gentle, as if approaching a wounded fawn. Ashcroft's ballroom, Ravensworth's silence, the cruelty of your sister, the vultures who circled once, they smelled blood. Henrietta flinched, not visibly, but inwardly, as if he had pressed a finger to a bruise. "I am not broken," she said. "I know," he replied, "but they think you are. And that, Henrietta, is their greatest mistake." There was something prophetic in his tone. She could not look away. "The offer begins." "Try Sir Tristan," she corrected herself, though his name alone felt easier on her tongue. "You have always spoken kindly to me, but I know the ways of men in society. Kindness has its price. What is yours?" He laughed softly. "You insult me by assuming I am so cheaply purchased. I do not collect wounded hearts like trinkets." "No?" Her voice had a blade's edge. "Then why are you here?" He sat opposite her, leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, a posture entirely indecorous for a gentleman, and all the more sincere for it, because you cannot return to the estate that betrayed you, because London will devour you if you walk unshielded into its salons. Because your stepmother will not stop merely at humiliation. She will pursue destruction, ruin, erasure. He held her gaze with a scholar's steadiness. And because the Duke does not deserve another chance to fail you, a tremor shook her chest. You presume much. I observe. Tristan's voice sharpened. The Duke cares for you. Yes, I saw it in his eyes. But care is not enough. Not in this world. He has power, and power unused becomes guilt, and guilt makes a man cowardly. Henrietta said nothing. Silence was her armor. Tristan continued, gentler now. I would see your brilliance recognized, not your beauty debated, not your worth slandered, not your reputation traded like a chess piece. She bristled. I am no man's pawn. Precisely, he said, smiling. Which is why I do not offer possession. I offer partnership. She blinked. Partnership? He rose and crossed to a leather portfolio resting near the mantel. Returning, he laid it between them and opened it. Inside were carefully drafted letters, sketches, estate maps, and a proposal so daring she could scarcely breathe. I am founding a scientific academy, Tristan said. One that does not turn away women. One that does not laugh at the prospect of their discovery. You could be its spine, its mind, its curator. She stared at the documents as if they were forbidden scripture. You would trust me with this? She whispered. I would trust you above a dozen titled men with half your intellect, he replied. I have seen the astronomical notes you left behind when you were banished. Your star charts are superior to any I have seen in Cambridge. Her face burned. Those were only private musings. They were genius. Quiet, modest genius, but genius nonetheless. Tristan leaned closer. Henrietta, you have spent years hiding light so unworthy people might feel tall beside you. I am asking you to cast it across the heavens. Something in her chest cracked, not like glass, but like ice melting. I cannot, she said, not yet daring hope. It would invite scandal. Women do not lead institutions of knowledge. Then we will manufacture scandal of a more illustrious kind, he replied with a dangerous smile. Not your shame, society's shame for having doubted you. We will gather every progressive gentleman, every dissident scholar, every foreign patron with the nerve to defy convention. And when London reads the announcement in the Morning Gazette, they will not mock you. They will tremble. She looked at him as if he were mad, and perhaps he was. And the Duke? She breathed, unable to stop the question. Tristan's expression hardened. He made his choice years ago. When you were stripped of your dowry, abandoned, exiled behind closed doors like a stain on their honor. Tristan's voice lowered, almost reverent with fury. A man who loves you does not hesitate. A man who loves you burns down the world that tried to break you. Henrietta's pulse thundered, her throat tight. She remembered Marcus's eyes the night before, guilt, agony, restraint. She hated him for it. She loved him for it. Both hung like weights at her ribs. Tristan saw the war inside her and softened. I am not asking you to love me, Henrietta. I am asking you to choose your future over your past. The clock ticked in the stillness. A carriage rolled across the cobbles outside. Life continued, as if nothing inside that parlor had shifted, yet everything had. Henrietta spoke slowly, each syllable trembling with a new, budding strength. If I accepted, what would society say? They would say you were dangerous, Tristan answered almost proudly. And they would be right. She laughed, then quiet, but startling even to herself, a laugh that came not from mirth, but from liberation. You speak like a revolutionary. I speak like a man who has no patience for the cruelty of small minds. Henrietta folded her hands. And what would your name give me? My name? Tristan blinked, as if surprised by the simplicity of the question. Nothing. Street Claire carries little weight among dukes and dowagers. I am merely a knight with a sharp tongue and a stubborn heart. Then why would anyone follow us? Because the world is changing, he replied. And you are the change they fear. Her breath shuddered. He leaned close, voice barely above a whisper. Let me help build the life they tried to deny you. Not as your rescuer, not as your master, as a man who sees you. Those last three words unmade her in a way Ravensworth's confessions never had. Because Tristan had not knelt, nor bowed, nor begged for absolution. He had simply presented her with power. The confession that was not. She rose, pacing toward the fireplace, trembling with contradictions. "I do not know what I feel," she said. "You are overwhelmed," Tristan replied, "not confused. You are clever." Her lips curled, bitter and admiring. Too clever. Not clever enough to pretend disinterest. He lifted his eyes toward her. There was no shame in them. "I am selfish in one regard. I want you near. I want to watch the world bend itself around you." His breath caught. "And I will gladly fight the Duke for the privilege." Her heart clenched painfully. "Do not speak of him as if he were a coward. She swallowed. "He was lied to, manipulated. They used him." "And he allowed it," Tristan said softly. "Love is not a weapon to be put aside when inconvenient." She turned away. For the first time since their encounter, she raised her voice. "You do not understand." Tristan stood, but did not approach. "Then enlighten me." She shut her eyes. "I waited for him. I wrote to him until my fingers bled, until they dragged me away from my desk. I begged to know why I had been dismissed without explanation, why I was forfeited like livestock. He never came. He never wrote. He never fought." The room went silent. Tristan's voice, when it came, was gentle, careful, almost reverent. "You deserved answers," he said. "I deserved respect," she whispered. "You still do." A choice arrives dressed as future. Tristan reached into the portfolio once more and withdrew a sealed envelope. Red wax bore the crest of the Royal Astronomical Society. Henrietta stared. "You spoke to them?" "I did more than speak. I negotiated." He offered the letter across the room not as temptation, but as invitation. "You have been granted patronage for a year. Anonymous, of course, but sufficient to begin the Academy's foundation. Students could be recruited, lectures held, instruments purchased. I have not even signed anything." "No." He stepped closer, smiling. "But they have seen the brilliance of your star charts, and they have become believers." She looked at the envelope as if it might burst into flames. "You used my work without permission. I used your work to open a door you deserve." Tristan replied, unflinching. "If you wish me to withdraw the proposal, I will. I will face their ridicule and take the blame entirely. But I needed you to know what was possible." She stared at him. "You risked your career on me." He shrugged. "What is career when the future of knowledge stands before me?" Her pulse went wild. The arrival of destiny. Before she could reply, a knock thundered through the townhouse. Not polite, not tentative. A declaration. Lady Ashcroft's maid hurried to the door, the sound of heels sharp on the marble floor. Muffled voices followed, urgent, demanding. Then Sarah burst in, pale as lilies. "Your ladyship, he is here." Henrietta's blood froze. "Who?" Sarah swallowed. "His Grace, the Duke of Ravensworth." Tristan exhaled slowly. "Of course." Henrietta clutched the arm of the settee. The world tilted, past, present, and a future she had not dared imagine colliding in one violent instant. Sarah's voice trembled. "He insists upon seeing you." Henrietta stood on shaking legs. Tristan watched her, unreadable. "You do not have to face him alone," he said softly. "No." Her voice was iron. "I will." She crossed the drawing room, every step steady, even as her pulse roared. Tristan's offer lay behind her, bright as dawn. Ravensworth's presence waited ahead, dark as unfinished grief. At the threshold, she paused. Without turning, she spoke just above a whisper, words meant only for Tristan. "Do not take your offer back." "I wouldn't dare," he replied. Henrietta straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and stepped into the hall toward the man who had once abandoned her, and who now demanded audience. The door closed behind her. Chapter 8. Heroes Humbling. Henrietta descended the stairs as one might approach trial calm in appearance, trembling beneath the ribs. The banister's polished mahogany shone like wet ink, and the chandelier above scattered light across the marble floor in shards, like stars shattered across obsidian. The Duke of Ravensworth stood below, tall and unyielding, as if the house itself bent around his presence. He wore no court regalia, no embroidered waistcoat, no brooch wrought by a jeweler to flatter his rank. He had come armored only in a dark coat, hair slightly disheveled, face drawn with fatigue, a man undone by his own restlessness. Henrietta reached the bottom step. "Your Grace," she said, composed. Marcus bowed his head. not like a duke greeting a subject, but like a soldier acknowledging defeat. Henrietta. The rawness in his voice struck her harder than the single utterance of her name. He dropped all formality, all protection, as if he had torn open his own chest simply by speaking. I asked to be seen, he continued, but I did not expect you to grant me the privilege. Privilege? She approached the center of the entry hall, letting her gown settle around her like ripples forming across still water.
No, Your Grace. This is courtesy. Nothing more.
He closed his eyes as if her words could flay him. I deserve worse. She offered no contradiction. Silence was its own justice. The attempt at conversation. He lifted his gaze to her, straight-backed yet vulnerable. I could not sleep after the ball. I replayed every moment like a condemned man rehearsing his sins. I cannot suggest, must not suggest, that I suffered more than you, but I would speak if you will hear me. Henrietta clasped her hands behind her back. Speak, then, he exhaled. When you were banished, I was told by your stepmother, your father and the Earl of Belmont, that you had willingly forfeited your inheritance for someone else's dowry, that you had written letters not to me, but to a gentleman in service, some nameless tutor from Oxford, that you had abandoned your duty. Henrietta went very still. Every word was a shard of past betrayal, sliding into the flesh of her memory. Marcus pressed on, desperate. They swore you had confessed, that you would embarrass the family to protect a lover. They said your father had taken ill from the shame. That exile was the only solution. Henrietta's voice did not tremble. It froze. You believed them. Marcus swallowed, eyes tortured. You were young, defiant. I thought grief had driven you into rashness. And instead of verifying a single fact, she murmured, you condemned me by gossip. He flinched as if struck. I was a coward then, he said hoarsely. You deserved a man willing to go to war for you. I was a boy clutching a title like a shield. She stepped past him toward the parlor doors, not close enough to flee, but far enough to force him to follow. You speak of the past, she said, but it is the present that concerns me now. The Duke follows. He moved after her, each step purposeful, like a dogged shadow refusing to loosen its teeth. I came today because the present is strangling me, he said, because I will not watch you be torn apart again in London. Because, she cut him off. You do not own me, Marcus. He loved and hated the sound of his name on her tongue. No, he said quietly. I do not. I seek to earn your forgiveness, not claim your life. His restraint was new, almost disorienting. The man who once commanded rooms now struggled to beg for a single moment of her time. The parlor doors swung open as Lady Ashcroft emerged, elegant and startled at their confrontation. She was dressed for the day, sapphire gown, hair pinned with pearls. Her eyes widened. Your Grace, she said with careful courtesy, you might have informed the household before arriving so dramatically. He bowed. My apologies, Lady Ashcroft. I did not wish my guards to alert half the city. Too late, she replied dryly. Half of Mayfair saw your carriage. The gossip has already seated itself. Henrietta blinked. And now I shall be blamed for another scandal. Lady Ashcroft glanced between them, then exhaled with quiet conviction. Better the scandal that demands truth than the one that buries it. She withdrew, closing the doors behind them. Confession in the parlor. Marcus approached the nearest table, placing his gloves and cane upon it. His hands trembled. I will not insult you with excuses, he said. I do not ask for grace, only the chance to act. Henrietta paced to the hearth. Act how? His eyes hardened. By destroying those who orchestrated your expulsion. She laughed softly, a sound that did not belong to mirth, but to disbelief. You cannot slay them in the streets like some medieval knight. Perhaps not, but I can expose them. He raised his chin. I have letters, correspondence your stepmother never intended to come to light. Proof that she diverted estate funds, that she lied about your father's accounts, that she crafted your reputation into a weapon against you. Henrietta turned, stunned. You have proof? He nodded. I began collecting it the moment I realized what I had lost. Her pulse hammered. And when was that? He drew in a breath, as if inhaling fire. The morning I received your final letter, years too late. They hid it from me. I found it among abandoned correspondence, months afterward. Your handwriting cracked, trembling, desperate, asking only, Did I offend you? Why will you not answer me? Henrietta's fingers curled against her silk skirts. The memory was a wound she had learned to walk around, not touch. "I thought," she whispered, "that you had read those words and felt nothing." "I read them," he said, voice breaking, "and fell to the floor." He bowed his head, as if praying to the very ground she stood upon. The unexpected audience. The parlor doors creaked. Tristan Street Clare stood there cool, measured, unshaken. His gaze swept Marcus like an autopsy scalpel. "Your Grace," he said calmly, "you arrive with the urgency of a lover and the shame of an executioner." Marcus turned sharply. "Sir Tristan, your presence is not required." Henrietta's voice turned to steel. "On the contrary, he is here at my invitation." The Duke stiffened. Tristan smiled, not smugly, not cruelly, but with the quiet superiority of a man who holds his dignity like a blade. "Then I am honored," he said, stepping inside. "Shall I pour tea while you both dissect the corpse of your former affection?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "You play at wit, sir, but you meddle in matters you do not comprehend." "Perhaps," Tristan replied easily. "Yet I comprehend this. You abandoned her when she begged at the door, and now you appear like a repentant specter, demanding audience." Henrietta flinched. Marcus turned, eyes blazing. "I did not demand. I begged to see her." "And here you stand," Tristan countered, "uninvited to her heart, presuming your grief is redemption." Henrietta stepped between them. "Enough." Both men fell silent, one startled, the other thoughtful. She turned to Marcus. "What do you want of me? Truly. Not the villain's punishment, not the social repair me. What do you want?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "A chance." "A chance to be forgiven?" she asked. "No." His voice roughened. "A chance to make myself worthy of forgiveness." The distinction silenced even Tristan. The act of humbling. Marcus reached into his coat and drew out a folded parchment. He placed it upon the table with reverence. Henrietta hesitated. "What is this?" "An affidavit," he said, "signed last night declaring I was deceived, declaring your exile unjust, declaring that the estate of Belmont conspired to defraud you." Her heart thundered. "You would sign such a thing, knowing the scandal it will cause, knowing it will cost you allies?" He nodded. "Yes. And your title?" "My title survives everything," he replied. "My honor does not." Tristan's breath caught. Even he, adversary that he was, recognized the magnitude. Marcus lifted the parchment and held it out to her, not commanding, not forcing, but offering. "It is yours to use," he said. "If you wish to burn your stepmother's reputation to ash, I will light the match. If you wish to take her fortune, I will see the courts obey. If you wish to ignore every enemy who sneered at your downfall, I will escort you through every salon until they choke on their regret." Henrietta stared at him, not at the Duke, not at the title, not at the silhouette of her childhood affection, but at the man kneeling in the wreckage of his own pride. "Why now?" she asked. His voice cracked. "Because I cannot breathe, knowing that I might once again do nothing." Tristan inhaled sharply, jealousy, admiration, and irritation battling across his face. "Your Grace," he said coolly, "you present a convincing spectacle, but is it conviction or desperation at losing what you thought was yours?" Marcus turned his head slowly. "She was never mine to lose. She was her own. Henrietta Frozzi." He was not performing. For the first time in his life, Marcus Ravensworth was not asserting power, he was surrendering it. The moment society will whisper about. Henrietta reached out and took the affidavit. Marcus sagged, relief and terror rushing through him. "I accept this," she said. "Not as promise of reconciliation, but as evidence of sincerity." He bowed deeply. "As you command." "I command nothing," she replied. "I choose." She turned then toward Tristan, who watched with a scholar's restraint. "You ask me to choose my future over my past," she said softly. "And I hope you will," Tristan murmured. "With or without me." Marcus stiffened at the phrase, "with or without me," not from anger, but fear. Henrietta looked between them two men, one carrying her ghosts, the other her possibilities. "You both speak of my worth," she said, voice quiet and steady, "but neither of you truly understands it. My value is not determined by the man who wronged me or the man who would elevate me. I establish it myself." Marcus bowed his head. Tristan crossed his arms, contemplative. "Then establish it." She inhaled slowly. "I will." Humbling without triumph, Marcus stepped forward, risking one last plea. "Henrietta," his eyes softened, wrecked. "What must I do?" Her answer was a blade. "You must not try to win me. You must become someone I would never lose." The Duke staggered not physically, but soul deep. He bowed his head like a knight accepting a death sentence. "I will," he whispered. It was not promise, it was oath. Henrietta turned toward the window, the affidavit pressed against her chest. The morning sun spilled through the glass, gilding her hair, setting fire to the edges of her silhouette. Behind her, two men waited not as jailers or saviors, but as witnesses to a woman they had finally begun to understand. Chapter 9. The sky above the shattered battleground trembled with a violet pulse, like a vein in the body of a dying god. The air was thick, not with smoke, but with something heavier, compressed fear. The echo of 1,000 unspoken prophecies that had all predicted failure. Storm-charged clouds spun slow rotations overhead, responding to no wind, no weather, only the enormous power building beneath them. The survivor stood at the center of the ruins, shoulders squared, breathing carefully. Every inhale hurt, every exhale was a quiet promise. "I am not finished." The body was battered, armor cracked, knuckles raw from deflecting blows that would have killed any other mortal. A trembling hand gripped the hilt of the weapon. Not from weakness, but restraint. Hatred was easy. Purpose took discipline. The enemy stood 10 paces away, though no physical ground separated them. The earth between was simply broken, splintered ribs of stone jutting upward, ash-gray dust curling in spirals. The enemy's feet never touched any surface. Elevation maintained by a cold force that rejected gravity as a primitive concept. Veins of white light pulsed under the skin like a lightning map, branching toward fingertips that could collapse mountains. "You should kneel," the enemy said, voice soft as snowfall. "Your defeat is predetermined. Your blood belongs to me." The survivor laughed. Not loudly, only enough for both to hear it. "Then come claim it." A sound like thunder cracked the world. The enemy was no longer in front, but everywhere, multiplying into silhouettes of pure energy, moving faster than thought. Each after-image carried kinetic blades that left no visual trail but carved scars into the stone. Where the weapon struck, the ground melted. That level of power was reserved for wars that wrote history. The survivor did not retreat. Instead, a single motion was chosen. A forward step. Impact detonated across the battlefield. The enemy's blades collided with a raised guard, sparks exploding like meteors striking atmosphere. The air pressure alone forced debris outward in a ring, a ripple expanding until it reached the far cliffs and shattered them. For a moment, nothing existed except sound, violent, absolute, bone-penetrating. Then, silence. The enemy hovered a few meters back, expression unreadable. The survivor had not moved except to take that initial step. "You think endurance makes you fit to challenge me?" the enemy asked. "No," the survivor answered. "Pain does." A flicker crossed the enemy's eyes, something akin to curiosity. The lights beneath the skin brightened, forming lines that converged at both palms. The temperature rose instantly. Every shattered piece of stone blackened, then liquefied. Purple lightning dripped from the clouds above like rain made of electricity. The enemy lifted both arms. The world tore open. A sphere of annihilation formed above, rotating on an axis only the wielder could comprehend. It was larger than the ruins, larger than the battleground, larger than the memory of the war that had birthed this confrontation. Everything inside it vibrated violently, as if the air itself were screaming. This was not a weapon. It was an extinction event. The survivor felt their bones hum. Power ripped at muscle fibers, threatening to unravel everything down to the marrow. Even the weapon's hilt groaned, but fear did not come. Instead came recognition. This was the final shape of the enemy's arrogance, the belief that brutality was destiny. The survivor inhaled once, deeply. The lungs burned. Sparks crawled beneath the skin, reacting to something not external but internal, something dormant since birth. Every scar on the body aligned with a memory of survival. Each memory was fuel. Each near death was a stone in the foundation of their strength. The past did not haunt them. It forged them. The enemy spoke a single word in a language older than civilization. The annihilation sphere fell. Gravity bent around it. The sky convulsed, collapsing inward. Anything living within 30 paces died instantly. The shattered bones of long-dead warriors disintegrated to dust. The ground beneath the survivor liquefied, forming a crater that sank into the core of the world. And still, the survivor did not move. Arms came up. The weapon was raised. Not to block, to summon. Everything that had ever been endured, every failure, every betrayal, every moment spent kneeling in blood rose around them like a cyclone of invisible force. It was not magic, not technique, not heredity. It was stubbornness made divine. The blade drew a line upward, carving a path through the air, and the survivor roared. The impact was nuclear. Light swallowed the battlefield. A shockwave erupted at the collision point, spreading faster than sound, faster than gravity's grip. The annihilation sphere ruptured, as if pierced from the inside. Shards of condensed destruction rained down like flaming meteors, each splashing into the earth and vaporizing it. The sky fractured splinters of violet, gold, and white scattering in streaks that would take centuries to fade. The enemy flew backward, thrown like a discarded star. Their bodies struck the ruins, carving a trench through obsidian stone until everything stopped in a seismic groan. Silence returned. The survivor lowered the weapon. The world spun slowly around them. The enemy rose, not broken, but no longer untouched. Blood dripped from the corner of their mouth, glowing faintly as if infused with power. Their breathing was uneven. The arrogance had not vanished, but it was wounded. "You had no right," they said, wiping the blood away. The survivor's reply was calm. "I had every reason." The enemy laughed once, a genuine laugh, sharp and hollow. "Then come, let us finish it." They vanished, not through speed or teleportation, but through a shift in reality itself. One instant they were visible. The next, they were part of the environment woven through the shattered architecture, appearing in fractured mirror images, each imprint a perfect duplicate with lethal intent. 5 enemies attacked at once. No footsteps, no wind-up, only instant death. The survivor moved. The weapon spun in a grinding arc, clearing space only wide enough to survive. Blade met phantom body, but the enemy did not dissipate. Instead, the reflection fractured into 2 more copies, each struck from a different angle: throat, ribs, spine. The survivor absorbed the hits. Pain flared like white flame beneath the skin. Blood spilled over cracked armor panels. None of it slowed them. If anything, the wounds sharpened their focus. The 5th copy lunged. The survivor caught it barehanded. Fingers sank past radiant flesh and seized the core of the illusion. A twist, not of limb, but of will. The copy shrieked and imploded. 3 copies vanished instantly. Only 2 remained. The original did not reveal itself. The survivor pivoted, scanning. The weapon tip dragged sparks across the ground. Each spark became an ember. Each ember a tiny blossom of violet flame. The battlefield began to glow. The enemy materialized behind them. A blade entered flesh. It was not clean. It tore through skin, scraping ribs, ripping arteries. The survivor staggered, a wet cough spraying crimson across the ruins. The enemy leaned close, whispering against a blood-soaked ear. "Endings come to all things, even you." The survivor did not answer. Instead, the weapon reversed. With a single motion, it traced a crescent arc and plunged backward through the enemy's abdomen. It was the enemy's turn to gasp. Both froze, skewered on each other's blades. Blood poured in rivulets down both bodies, dripping onto obsidian stone. The survivor looked downward, not at the wound but at the enemy's hand. The blade trembled. Their grip was weakening. "You never understood," the survivor said. The enemy snarled, trying to twist the blade deeper. Understood what? That power chooses its master, not the other way around. The survivor pulled. The weapon slid upward, tearing through organs that did not obey mortal anatomy. The enemy screamed, body convulsing. The shock rippled outward again, forming fractures across the battlefield. The clouds overhead split. Light pure, white, blinding descended. But it did not save. It judged. The enemy collapsed to one knee, clutching their midsection. Their body leaked radiant blood, pooling in molten puddles that hissed and burned. The survivor stepped back, weapon lowered. The enemy's breathing became shallow. Their eyes lifted slowly, resentment flickering like dying embers. "You think you've won?" "No," the survivor said. The enemy blinked, confused. The survivor pointed the blade toward the sky. Winning was never the goal. A rumble answered. The clouds twisted into a spiral, enormous, suffocating, star-swallowing. From its center came something without form or color. Not lightning, not flame. A pressure, a presence. The enemy's face drained of expression, then of hope. "No," they whispered. You cannot summon it. It will not. It already has. The air collapsed inward. Everything that had lived, breathed, or pretended to be eternal bent its knees to the invisible gravity descending upon them. Stones cracked to powder. The battlefield flattened under the weight of a colossal, unseen will. A god without name. Not ancient. Not benevolent. The force that watches. Not an ally. Not a savior, but a witness. The enemy screamed not from fear, but from realization. You brought it here to end us both. The survivor didn't answer. They stood with weapon braced, hair lifting in the windless pressure, body trembling from torn flesh and exposed bone. Pain was irrelevant now. Only resolve remained. The presence pressed lower. The enemy clawed at the ground, the air, anything. Their body contorted, every nerve firing in revolt. Blood became vapor. Muscles liquefied. "Stop it!" they shrieked. "I was chosen!" The survivor stepped forward, voice steady. "No," they said. "You were tolerated." In the final instant, the presence compressed the enemy, not crushing them, but erasing them. The body vanished in a cascade of light shards that dissolved before touching ground. There was no corpse, no grave, no artifact, only absence. Silence consumed everything. The sky eased, the earth exhaled, the force withdrew, its purpose fulfilled. The survivor collapsed to one knee, weapon planted to keep from falling face first. Blood ran freely, pooling beneath them. The heartbeat was slowing, vision blurred. This was not victory. This was cost. The survivor looked at their own trembling hands, coated in the enemy's last traces. Their own blood ran darker. The world around them settled into stillness, ruined and quiet. "I am not finished," they whispered, voice shaking. No one answered. Not the sky, not the presence, only the survivor's lungs, fighting for one more breath. Then another, and another. The weapon's blade, still buried in scorched stone, flickered with weak light. The survivor placed a hand on it and pulled themselves upright, staggering, limping, bleeding but not defeated. Not yet. Chapter 10. For hours, perhaps longer, the survivor walked. The battlefield was far behind now, but its wound remained visible across the horizon, a dark scar torn into the earth. The sky above had returned to a normal shade, though it still flickered occasionally, as if the memory of the god's descent had been etched into its fabric. Every step hurt. The ground beneath the boots left a trail of blood droplets, drying quickly against pale stone. There were no birds here, no trees, only endless terrain carved by past wars, one conflict replacing another, until the land no longer remembered anything but violence. The survivor kept moving because stopping would mean surrendering to the pain, and the pain was not allowed to win. Eventually, the terrain dipped, forming a valley shaped like a bowl carved by claws. At its center stood a structure ancient, simple, and impossible to have survived so many battles. It resembled a shrine, though no faith claimed it. Every stone block was stacked without mortar, held together by weight alone. A circular opening in the roof allowed light to pour into its hollow core. The survivor approached, hand resting on the weapon's hilt. The air felt different here, thick, slightly warm, like a living breath. Something pulsed beneath the earth in slow rhythm, not hostile, not welcoming, more like a heartbeat of a forgotten thing sleeping below. Inside the structure, there was only one object, an altar of obsidian. On it rested nothing, yet that emptiness carried meaning. The survivor placed one bloodied palm against the altar's surface. Cold spread through the skin, then the nerves, then the bones. The body shuddered, but not from fear, from recognition. A whisper, like wind through broken reeds, entered the mind. "You summon what you cannot control." The survivor did not respond, not aloud. A second whisper, clearer. "You called it once, you cannot call it again." An image flashed behind the eyes, the enemy collapsing, erased in a violent shimmer of light shards. The force descending. The crushing presence of judgment. The survivor removed their hand from the altar. "I didn't call it," they said. "I invited it." Silence followed. Then another whisper. Invitation is a commitment. The survivor's knees nearly buckled, not from blood loss, but from the sudden gravity of the unseen speaker. The air thickened, like being submerged underwater. The altar vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling in faint trails. A shape began to form above the stone. Not a body, not a figure. A silhouette, like the shadow of something gargantuan projected onto fog, too large for the chamber, yet somehow contained within it, coiled like a serpent in its own skull. "You carry its mark," the voice said. The survivor looked at their left hand. The veins beneath the skin glowed faintly white, like scar tissue that remembered lightning. "After the war," the survivor answered. "It didn't leave. It never leaves," the presence replied. "It waits." A breeze impossible indoors blew through, lifting dust and old leaves. The light from the roof's opening shifted, no longer yellow but pale, sterile, like moonlight reflecting off ice. The silhouette condensed until it resembled a pair of coiling wings. Then it dissipated. The survivor stood alone again. But they were not the same. A pulse of strength, not healing, but stabilization coursed through the body. Torn flesh knotted tighter. Bleeding slowed. Bones no longer rattled with every breath. The survivor exhaled and allowed the weapon to rest against their shoulder. Outside, the wind had risen. Sand drifted across the valley floor, swirling in restless spirals. In the far distance, something was approaching, a faint distortion in the air, like heat bending light. It moved quickly. The survivor stepped beyond the shrine, eyes narrowing. Their fingers tightened around the weapon. The distortion grew, becoming a line, then a ripple, then a wave of shimmering air. It moved low across the ground, as if carried by invisible predators. Then it struck, not as wind or flame, but as a scream, a blast of sound that tore through the valley and sent stone fragments into the air. The survivor braced against it, leaning forward, boots grinding against the ground. The scream ended abruptly. Standing at the edge of the valley was a figure cloaked in pale cloth, face wrapped, feet bare. They were thin, almost gaunt, but something about them was wrong. The survivor recognized the feeling immediately. This one did not breathe in the way living things did. The figure raised a hand. No weapon, no threat, only silence. The survivor began to walk toward them, deliberately slow, step by measured step. Dust lifted with each footfall. "You followed the anomaly," the stranger said, voice muffled through cloth. The sky split. The world shook. Something was erased. The survivor stopped 5 paces away. The stranger continued. "You called it the witness." The survivor did not correct them. Silence was answer enough. The stranger bowed their head. "We have waited for one who could draw its eye. Many have tried. All failed. All died." They lifted their head again. "We are the remnants. We were shattered by its descent in ages past. We do not worship." A pause. "We endure." The survivor studied them. The pale robes fluttered slightly in the wind, but nothing beneath them shifted. No heartbeat pulsed through the stranger's body. Either they were not truly alive, or they lived in a different way. "What do you want?" the survivor asked. The stranger pointed toward the horizon. "Your enemy was not the last. The one erased was only a harbinger, a seeker, a collector of power, a fragment of the true adversary." They turned their heads slightly, as if listening to something distant. "The next will not challenge you openly. It will dismantle you slowly. It will tear memory, identity, purpose. It will devour your reason to fight." The survivor rolled one shoulder back, cracked their knuckles, and lifted the weapon. "Let it try." The stranger gave a strained laugh. "It will not try. It will succeed if you stand alone." The survivor said nothing. The weapon hummed faintly, echoing their heartbeat. The stranger took one step closer. "What you summoned is not a tool, not a weapon, not an ally. It is a principle given shape. It observes imbalance. It devours pride. It punishes those who declare themselves absolute." Their gaze sharpened. "You are not like it. You bleed. You rage. You falter." A wind tore across the valley, sending grit into the air. The survivor shielded their eyes. The stranger spoke one more time. "That is why you may win." The wind stopped. The stranger was gone. Only a ring of pale dust remained where they had stood. The survivor looked up toward the sky, which had dimmed again. The sun bled orange behind the valley ridge. Night approached fast, devouring color, swallowing the last traces of warmth. The weapon felt heavier now, not because of exhaustion, but recognition. Strength would no longer be enough. What was coming would not strike physically. It would strike identity, memory, certainty. The survivor started walking again, not back toward the shrine, not toward safety, toward the unknown horizon where the next storm was gathering. The body still ached, the wound still burned, the blood still dripped, but the steps did not falter. Not even once. Chapter 11. Night laid its velvet hand upon the horizon long before the survivor found rest. There was no campfire. Flame would expose them to what hunted in silence, so they sat beneath a jagged arch of stone, the weapon resting across their knees. The air had cooled, the wind now a whisper threading through the valley like a timid messenger. Above, the stars glimmered with an unsettling brightness, not comforting, not distant. Instead, they looked as though they were watching. The survivor exhaled slowly, breath forming faint clouds. Their muscles trembled each time they tried to relax, the aftershocks of battle still echoing in their bones. The glow in their veins, those faint white scars, had dimmed to soft threads beneath the skin. They reached into their pack, fingers brushing cloth, tools, shards of rations. No luxuries, no tokens of home, only the things that kept them alive. From the bottom, they pulled a single object wrapped in oiled paper, a memory, a letter, ink faded, corners torn. They had read it so many times, the words lived in them now. You will not be forgotten. You will return when they understand you. You will not kneel. They had once believed the writer was a liar. Years of exile had convinced them so. But after the sky split, after the force descended, after the valley screamed, they understood. It had not been a prophecy or kindness. It had been a warning. A crunch of stone snapped the survivor's attention outward. Their hand gripped the weapon, not the wind, not an animal. Footsteps. Something moved beyond the arch, slow, confident, like a creature who had already chosen its prey. A tall shape materialized in the half-light, draped in thin cloth that rippled around its limbs like liquid shadow. No face. No voice. A presence. The air quivered. The ground grew cold. The stars above leaned in. The survivor rose to their feet. Every instinct screamed to strike first. Instead, they spoke quiet, steady. Are you the next? The shape held still. Then it bent, as if bowing or studying. A voice, impossibly distant and impossibly close, emerged without breath. We admired the erasure. The survivor tightened their grip on the weapon until knuckles whitened. The being continued softly, almost with reverence. To call down the witness is to challenge the order of existence. The survivor spat into the dust. I didn't challenge order, I survived it. The being tilted its head, skeletal beneath the cloth. Survival is rebellion. Rebellion is sin. A chill crawled down the survivor's spine. So you're the judge? The shape twisted once sharp, insect-like. We are the correction. For the first time since the battlefield, the survivor's heartbeat quickened. Not fear, recognition. This enemy did not want blood. It wanted surrender, identity, control, memory. The survivor raised the weapon. The faint white glow along their veins responded, flaring. The being retreated half a pace, not in fear, but in calculation. You carry the mark of its gaze, it whispered. You stand in defiance of cycles written long before you. The weapon pulsed with restrained light. That's the problem, the survivor said. They stepped forward. We burned the cycle. The being trembled once, like a flickering flame, then vanished. No scream, no wind, only darkness, as if night itself swallowed it whole. The survivor lowered the weapon slowly. Above, the stars blinked one, then another, until a path of pale light formed across the heavens, stretching toward the unknown horizon. A direction, a summons, a challenge. The survivor sheathed the weapon across their back, shoulders squared beneath the weight of the coming war. They did not look behind. Not anymore. There was no past to reclaim, only a future to carve open. And when the next enemy came, whether formed of flesh or void, god or ghost, they would meet it the same way, upright, unbowed, and unafraid.